So recently I came across a video on YouTube from Emma Vigeland. She is a reporter for TYT Network. I think her YouTube page is called TYT, like Rebel Headquarters or something. So she goes all over the country and does interviews with like Trump supporters, and she's done interviews with I'm going to be showing you in a second, Elizabeth Warren supporters, I think Bernie supporters. So she's talked to all different kinds of people all over the country. At one point, she was pretty much considered as one of the better progressive, leftist reporters out there, and supporters of like leftist, type politicians. And she still claims to be. But there's been a little bit of doubt risen, a little bit of doubt rising about whether she truly is a supporter of truly leftist progressive candidates. But we're going to get to that in a second. So these are a couple. So I'm going to play you a couple of videos here. A couple of videos where she spoke to Elizabeth Warren supporters and why they support Elizabeth Warren and why they don't support Bernie Sanders. So that's specifically what this next one is focusing on. This first video. So I'm going to play the first video for you guys, and then we're going to discuss it on the other side, and then we'll play another video for you guys after that. So let's play this first video first, and then I'll analyze it after this. So just take a look at this one, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Senator Elizabeth Warren has filled out this Washington Square Park rally here in New York City. There's so many people here. Her popularity just keeps growing and growing. So I wanted to ask her supporters, why her? Why not Bernie Sanders? If it's really just on policy, those two are closest. So why support her over the further left, more democratic socialist version in Bernie?
I think Bernie's message kind of resonated with everyone at first, and she can kind of carry the torch farther than he can with others, different demographics and supporters and things like that. So I think she has a more of electability factor than Bernie does this time around.
I got into Elizabeth Warren a long time ago. If you remember in 2008, the housing crisis in California, we lost our home, including everybody on my row in Sacramento, California, along with rows and rows of homes. And I couldn't understand it. I was still in high school, so I didn't understand why we lost our home, but they just said, the recession, right? So as I got older, I got some researching, and I saw her and how she's been fighting and screaming at the top of her lungs about why we're going to a recession, how this can bankrupt American families, and at the end of the day, what we can do about it. So then she ran for Senate, and then she's been out there being the voice of what I really have been going through. So I believe in her in my heart and soul. I understand the Bernie supporters, I get them. But Elizabeth is my heart and soul because I feel like she's really speaking to what I've been through. And I'm still a capitalist. I still believe in markets, but I believe in rules and regulations. Like everything she believes in, I really do believe in.
I like Senator Warren because she has, her slogan is, I have a plan for everything, but also she talked about getting rid of the filibuster, which I think is very important because nothing will be passed if you don't get rid of the filibuster because we'll never have enough votes in the Senate to get anything passed. And I just think she's so smart and she's awesome. I just love her.
I like Bernie too. I think a great ticket would be her and Bernie, but that's too much to ask.
Bernie, why are you here at this Elizabeth Warren rally?
I don't know.
All right, should be campaigning. Get back to it.
She's not my candidate yet, 100%. I like Pete Buttigieg, but I like her. I like that she has a plan.
All right. So it's between her and Pete Buttigieg.
Oh yeah, but also maybe even Amy Klobuchar and Cory Booker. I'm not even close to picking one person yet. But if I'm gonna go for somebody like on the left side of the spectrum, it's going to be Elizabeth Warren as opposed to any of the others like Bernie or anybody like that.
So why not Bernie?
It's time for a woman is all. I mean, Bernie's over and done. Didn't do it the last time. Elizabeth has more energy. I think she's got more intelligence. So
I think more people can relate to her. And I like that she's a woman, and she's very smart. She's very sharp. I mean, I'm not sure any of them are quite as smart as she is.
Bernie's a great guy and he's fought really hard, but I just don't think that people are going to elect someone of that age, unfortunately. And it would be great to see a woman president. I think that this country elected Barack Obama, the first African American president. We can't elect the first woman. I think that's where this country needs to go.
So, I mean, honestly, I'm just like cringing and like laughing along as I'm listening to that. So let's go through it here. So the first person says that Elizabeth Warren can carry the torch farther than he can, and with other demographics, and has more electability than Bernie does. So what is that based on? I have no idea. I don't even. Listen, when these people say, when they say this whole like the electability type stuff, it's a made up word. That's a made up word by the mainstream media. It's something that they just like to throw out there as like a buzzword, like electability. You know, are you electable? Are you electable? Like they just put that out there to get people to decide that some are, you know, to come up with some arbitrary reason as to how somebody is electable when it's pretty much based on nothing. So, did you see a single person? I mean, other than like maybe the second person, I'll get to them in a second, but the second person mentioning that like the housing crisis and what they went through in California and stuff, other than that, I didn't hear a single policy position that these people pointed out. So the second person says, "Oh, I'm a capitalist, and she's in my heart and soul. In my heart and soul, I find love Hillary Clinton. She buries in my heart and soul, and she does so much for like it's this emotional attachment to Elizabeth Warren that this specific person has, and it seems like a lot of these people have. And I mean, listen, the whole idea of like the housing crisis and, you know, you lost your house, and he said he was young, high school, that's perfectly legitimate. I totally get that. Why you think Bernie Sanders can't fix that problem? I mean, he says he's a capitalist, he believes in markets. That's the same thing Elizabeth Warren says. So, okay, fine. If that, I mean, at least you're honest and saying, okay, this is why I support Elizabeth Warren, because I believe in markets, I'm a capitalist. Okay, I mean, I don't agree with that, but that's at least you're saying, and you're not saying like, oh, well, she's better than Bernie, but I don't know why. You know, that's basically what a lot of people say, or that she's a woman or whatever. At least in this case, this is a legitimate reason. So, well, yeah. So with the first person, they just said, oh, she can carry the torch further than him, and he didn't even give a policy reason. That guy didn't make any sense. The second guy, okay, I'll give him credit because he says that he's a capitalist. And, you know, he believes in market and stuff, and, you know, the housing crisis stuff. I mean, Bernie Sanders, it's not like Bernie Sanders wasn't addressing the housing crisis. And what did Elizabeth Warren do to talk about the housing crisis? I mean, maybe she spoke about it. I mean, did she put out any policies regarding? Did she put out any legislation about it? I'm thinking Bernie did it. If you're talking about the housing crisis 10 years ago, in 2008, Bernie Sanders was in the Senate. Elizabeth Warren was not in the Senate. So if you're talking about that, I think it was 2007, 2008, and because the housing crisis led to the recession, the 2008 recession. So if you're talking about that, it's about 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. So Bernie Sanders was in the Senate. He was actually fresh in the Senate. So Elizabeth Warren was not anywhere. She hadn't even created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau yet. So I don't know what he's talking about, but okay, I get his position being a capitalist and you know, liking markets and stuff, but the whole emotional, like, oh, I believe her in my heart and stuff, that was ridiculous. And then it gets worse. The third person says she likes Elizabeth Warren because she wants to get rid of the filibuster, and nothing will get passed with it still around, and she's just wonderfully smart, and she's great, and I'm so in love with her, blah, blah. Okay. So the whole idea of wanting to get rid of the filibuster, it's a double-edged sword. If you get rid of that filibuster, what's going to happen when a Republican comes into, you know? So I'm sorry. So not only the Republican becomes president, but the Republicans take the Senate. What's going to happen? They're going to end up being able to do everything with 51 votes. You want to go into war somewhere? Well, we're already going to wars everywhere. But I mean, I don't know. You want to go into more wars? You want to do more, you know, terrible things? You want to push more tax cuts, pass more tax cuts? Yeah, you don't have to go through a filibuster. So when it comes to the idea of the filibuster, I get the argument, But you have to understand that that's not going to solve all our problems. If anything, it makes the problems worse. Obviously there's going to be another Republican in office. There's going to be another Trump-like figure, possibly, I'm guessing, in office at some point, and that person's going to want to push tax cuts. You don't even have to be a Trump-like figure. Just be a standard Republican. They're going to push for tax cuts just like the Bush tax cuts were passed, which, by the way, were extended and made permanent by Barack Obama. But that's a story for another day. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the whole idea of the filibuster, you're not, like, you're putting a Band-Aid over a gangrenous wound. You're not fixing all the problems by getting rid of the filibuster. So this person is just kind of listening to, the Democratic Party talking points and watching too much MSNBC, and thinks, doing this one thing is going to fix the problem. And because Elizabeth Warren has talked about it, that must mean it's a wonderful idea. And then when she's president, it's not like she can get rid of the filibuster. So just because she's talking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Just like any other issue. So that's something that has to be decided by the Senate it has to be decided by Senate. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. So the fourth person is probably the worst one. She says Warren isn't her candidate yet, but likes Pete Buttigieg. And she also said Cory Booker and Amy Klobuchar, but she likes that Warren, quote, has a plan. Wow, yeah. Mention one of those plans for me, please. Ma'am, please mention one plan that you support that Elizabeth Warren supposedly has. And then the worst part, she says it's time for a woman. Oh my God, making the same fucking mistake in 2016. We already went through this in 2016. And then she says Bernie is over and done. Didn't do it last time. Elizabeth has more energy and has more intelligence. The same fucking people that say Bernie Sanders yells too much. Bernie Sanders is too angry. Bernie Sanders his supporters are too passionate, or not passionate. They say they're too. They also say his supporters are too angry, but whatever. They're saying all these things about these Bernie supporters, like having too much energy and being too angry and being too upset, and then somehow Elizabeth Warren has more energy. I don't even get what that means. Even with Bernie Sanders' heart attack issue, he's going to still have as much, if not more, energy than Elizabeth Warren. That's complete bullshit. This person is the worst out of all of them for sure. And then the next person is pretty bad too. They say. The fifth person says more people can relate to Warren and likes that she's a woman. She's very smart and very sharp. Jesus Christ. So more people can relate to, based on what? I'm telling you, man, when these people say these things, they're listening to talking points from MSNBC pundits. These are not things that regular people say. These are not something that people regularly pick up on. Nobody watches Elizabeth Warren and says, yeah, that person can relate to me. That corporate lawyer that went to Harvard, that used to be a Republican, is somehow can relate to me. And this was in New York. This was in Washington Park in New York. She's from Oklahoma. Elizabeth Warren is originally from Oklahoma. Former Republican, corporate lawyer, went to Harvard. Somehow that person can relate more than the activist who went to Chicago University. It was a socialist. His honeymoon, he went for his honeymoon to Russia. He went to the Soviet Union for his honeymoon with Bernie and Jane Sanders. They went for their honeymoon to the Soviet Union because they were going and talking about different issues regarding like the Cold War and kind of creating peace, between the United States and America, and then United States and Russia, and then figuring out how the situations were in Russia regarding, because it was obviously run by communist Russia back then, and how the school programs and different Medicare, healthcare, and school programs and whatever. But poverty was very low there because of the kind of the communist regime that it controlled there. Obviously, that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders supported everything that they were doing, but they were going there and they were examining how the communist rule was back then. And he went there. He wasn't going on honeymoons to the fucking Bahamas or the Cayman Islands or whatever they go, wherever people go, Hawaii or some shit. He was going and trying to go, trying to do something useful for his own knowledge and for his, so he can maybe possibly even inform other people. And obviously, Bernie is also a guy that he marched with MLK. Bernie Sanders marched with MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement. You can't relate to that guy? There wasn't one, other than one black dude. There wasn't any other people of color in that video. And do they know about Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders marched with the MLK? If they do, they would probably be like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit. Because, I don't know, because he's white. And he's a man. And whatever. He's a socialist or what. I don't know, who knows? People bring up random shit when they smear Bernie. But Bernie Sanders has done a hell of a lot more things than Elizabeth Warren that relates to regular people. Other than the fact that Bernie Sanders has been in Washington since 1990, but he's still just as regular as anybody else is because he's going and meeting with regular people on a daily basis, and he's been in contact with regular people on a daily basis. Like I said, he's marched with the MLK. He went... he spends his honeymoons going to different countries just to educate himself more about how their countries are run. He goes with his wife, of all people, which is even more surprising. Not a lot of people will do that. So Bernie Sanders is the most relatable candidate running for president right now, and he's the most relatable politician in the country. That is undoubtable. You cannot say that Elizabeth Warren can relate to people more. That's just based on nothing. Again, that person is repeating something that she heard on MSNBC, and she's just putting something out there that she heard, and it just makes sense to her. She's very smart and very sharp. Oh my God! We need a fucking genius out there. We need a Harvard law graduate. Yeah, that really worked out for us when Obama became president. He was such a wonderful president when he was, when he invaded 5 extra countries on top of the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war that we were in. He ended up invading 5 more countries, 7 wars. He dropped 26,000 bombs in 1 year. In 2016, I believe it was. Barack Obama dropped 26,000 bombs. He used the drone program where he used drone strikes on innocent Middle East innocent people in the Middle East. 97% of the time, Barack Obama's drone strikes were killing the wrong people. They were not killing terrorists. They were killing innocent people. I mean, how is that person, and those are all things that Elizabeth Warren has not spoken out against. She's spoken a little bit about the military-industrial complex and how they're kind of screwing over the regular people, or screwing over basically the country, and then obviously in extension the regular people by having all this money invested into endless wars. But she doesn't really get into the details of it, and she hasn't. Her foreign policy record is horrible. So my point is that when you have somebody out there that's very sharp and very smart, like a Barack Obama type, which Elizabeth Warren basically is, it doesn't mean you're automatically gonna just fix all the problems just because you're smart and sharp. That's not how you get things done. You need to go out there and be strong and be standing up for positions that you've been pushing for years, which Bernie Sanders has done. And then the 6th person in the video says they don't think people will elect someone Bernie Sanders' age, and they would like to have a woman president just like they elected the first black president in Barack Obama. So again, as usual, back to the identity politics. We have to get a woman in there because the last president was a black man. So let's get a black woman or a white woman, whatever. We need to take that next step of progress by putting a woman in there, because that's going to solve all our problems. Laugh along with me. So just typical, idiots that honestly, it just makes me cringe listening to them. So we have another video now. So the next video is, like I said, that first video was from Warren supporters in New York City, Washington Park. It was an anti-corruption rally. And this next video is in Miami, Florida, also speaking with Elizabeth Warren supporters. So check this out, and then we'll talk about this on the other side.
Part 1 is attack the corruption head on. Part 2 is let's restructure, make a couple of structural changes in this economy. And part 3, let's protect our democracy.
I'm here at the Elizabeth Warren rally in Miami the day before she's set to take the stage in the first Democratic debate. What's interesting to me is that Elizabeth Warren seems to have the support of many establishment-minded voters. Third Way said they'd be okay with her, although I think that's the minority, and also progressive-minded voters. So she's bringing these two groups together. Why is that? And if Elizabeth Warren isn't the nominee, who would these Warren supporters back instead? Is Elizabeth Warren your number 1 candidate, would you say?
I would say she's in my top 2.
Who's the other one? Can I guess? Is it Bernie Sanders?
No, not Bernie. Kamala Harris is my number 2. Is between her and Elizabeth Warren.
My alternative would probably be Kamala Harris. I kind of want to learn more about the other candidates. She's my second, and then I would say I want to learn more about Yang.
So by my estimation, Elizabeth Warren is the second most progressive candidate in the race after Bernie Sanders. So I was curious to find that a lot of the supporters here aren't considering Bernie Sanders as their second or third choice candidate, and in fact don't like him at all in some instances.
The 2016 election was so divisive and tore apart the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and that is part of the reason that we have Trump in the White House. And I just think that it's really time. I mean, it's just not the right time. We've got to get rid of Trump in power, and I don't believe that having Bernie in the mix is a good thing for the party.
I'm a supporter of Elizabeth Warren. I'm actively donating to her and to Bernie Sanders. I think those are the only two candidates right now that are representing quality values in Americans, the young people, against corruption, standing up against corruption, the big corporations that are polluting the environment and just running over all our industries, exporting our workers overseas, and just keeping all the profits for themselves.
I don't understand where the discrepancy comes in. I mean, it could be that Warren is a registered Democrat or Warren is a woman. I don't know. I don't think people, when they say that they don't like Bernie Sanders but they like Elizabeth Warren, I don't think there's a lot of substance to that. I think maybe they are unaware of how close on the issues they actually are.
A lot of people would say that Bernie Sanders is closest to Elizabeth Warren on policy. He's not in your top three considerations?
Just from what happened in like the previous, presidential run, I was for him for a while, but I feel that his values are a little too extreme for me.
If Bernie's looking like he's going to lose to Biden, then I'll definitely have to switch support to Bernie.
Can you explain why it's between Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to the similar reasons why I was a big Hillary supporter. I was raised by a single mom, and I guess through the eyes of my mom, I kind of understood the unfair struggles that women have to go through, especially in a world dominated by men.
It's about opportunity. It's about who we are as a country. Because here's how I see this. My daddy, he ended up as a janitor. But his baby daughter, she got the opportunity.
When she makes the case for really progressive positions, she can do them in an emotionally compelling way. So it's not just, I have a 5-point plan for universal child care. It's, here's my story of how I almost had to opt out of the job market because I couldn't handle the struggles of having 2 kids as a single mom while having a job.
So again, I mean, usual supporters that just don't seem to be they don't seem to be the progressives that they claim to be. These are just people that are still stuck in they're still stuck in 2016. They're still kind of the same kind of Hillary, sound like the same kind of Hillary type diehards. So the first person said they had Warren as their number 1 choice and Kamala as their number 2 choice, which is kind of surprising in a way, but okay. And it's and they said they support them because it comes back to why they backed Hillary Clinton, due to the fact that they were raised by a single mom, and through the eyes of their mom, they realized the quote unfair struggles that women have to go through in a world dominated by men. So, listen, when it comes to the idea that like you have this view because of your mom, I get it. I understand that being a single mom it's tough. Nobody's denying that. But to vote for a presidential candidate based on that is just strange. It just doesn't make a sense to me. And yeah, obviously the world is dominated by men. Ultimately, it comes down to the policies. What are the policies? So, like I said earlier on the show, Bernie Sanders is a feminist. He supports women's rights. He's pro-choice. He supports a woman if she wants to have an abortion. He supports her right to use contraceptives and whatever. He supports all of these things. So, yeah, he's a man, but at least he supports a woman's rights to do something. And Whether, I love my mom. If my mom, whether or not she was a single mom, that wouldn't change my view on why, on who I vote for president. That just makes no sense to me. But listen, I'm trying to analyze somebody that I don't know them. I don't know what they've gone through in their life other than what they just explained. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that's a legitimate reason to not vote for a more progressive candidate. Now, all these people that spoke here, they don't seem to say that Bernie Sanders is more progressive. By the way, the fact that they say Kamala Harris is their number 2 just makes no sense. I mean, again, there's no policy. You're just saying that I support this person because they're a woman. It just comes down to identity politics again. Everything with these kind of people is just identity politics, just identity, woman, woman of color. I don't know, men are dominating the world. Okay, but how about the policies though? So anyway, the second person says they have Warren as their number 1 and Kamala as their number 2, just like the last person. But they say they want to learn more about the other candidates and possibly might go for Yang or want to learn more about Yang, at least Andrew Yang. They said they don't have Bernie as one of their top choices because of what happened in 2016 in the primary, and that after being for him, they realized his values are, quote, a little too extreme. Again, what are the issues? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe Emma Vigeland, she edited those parts out, but I would like to hear the policies that these people this person believes is truly, a little too extreme. What is too extreme? Getting Medicare for all for people that don't even have decent health, even remotely decent health care. Getting free college for people that have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, for college and to be put into student loan debt. People that, wanting to get rid of, cancel student loan debt, cancel medical debt, wanting to get, people a $15 minimum wage. Obviously, that person is living their life very, very comfortably if they think that Bernie Sanders is a little too extreme. And these are young people. The first video I played for you guys, I don't know if it was all, those are kind of a mix of younger and older people. These were all young people. You guys can check out the video. I'm only posting the audio, and then it's a screenshot of the Rebel headquarters logo. But if you guys want to check out the video, you can see all those people are young people at this rally, and it was in Miami, Florida. And these were all young people, and one of these young people saying that Bernie's policies are too extreme. It makes no sense. And a lot of these people say, "Oh, I was for him in 2016." I don't know if I believe that. A lot of Bernie supporters have been on Twitter, have been calling out people that say, "Oh yeah, I was for Bernie." Then all of a sudden, I realized that he's too angry, and I can't support him anymore. So yeah, I don't know how true that is, but whatever. And then it says the third person says that the 2016 primary was, quote, so divisive and tore apart the Democratic Party, and that's why we have Trump, and they don't believe having Bernie in the mix is a good thing for the party. I mean, what else can I say to that? It's just ridiculous. It's so absurd, and this seems like another one of those, Hillary Clinton diehards that, is all bent out of shape and triggered by the fact that Bernie Sanders had the audacity to challenge Hillary Clinton in a primary. How could he do that? He needs to just hand over the presidency to Hillary Clinton, and now he needs to hand over the presidency to Elizabeth Warren, even though we haven't had a single primary yet. This is what these people think. Well, at least certainly in regard to Hillary Clinton, they thought she was like on the top of a throne. You have to bow at the altar of the Queen Hillary Clinton and give her exactly what she wants because she's demanding it and because her supporters are demanding it. Not one Bernie Sanders supporter has said that Bernie Sanders should be handed the presidency, let alone the nomination. Nobody has ever said that I've any Bernie Sanders supporters that I've spoken to, and I am in constant communication with Bernie Sanders supporters on Twitter and social media. So I know who they are. I know what they say. Not a single one of them has said that Bernie Sanders it's time for Bernie. Well, they've said it. To be fair, they have said it's time for Bernie Sanders, but they don't say because it's Bernie Sanders. They say because of his policies. They're not in love with Bernie Sanders. Oh, just Bernie Sanders because he's a white Jewish guy, from Brooklyn, New York. No, nobody's ever said that. They've said that They said that his policies are what's going to help this country. That we love his policies and we support him. See, everything is about policy when it comes to Bernie supporters. They don't love, a guy because he's, a 78-year-old guy, Jewish possibly atheist guy from Brooklyn, New York, with bad posture and wears suits from Kohl's, Kohl's department store. That's not the way that's not the way we think. Bernie supporters like him for his policies, period. That's all it really is. And that's what it comes down to. Now, if they, respect Bernie Sanders as a person and think he's a nice guy and stuff, that's fine too. But the policies come first. All that other stuff is secondary or just doesn't exist. I know it doesn't exist for me. I just care about his policies. So, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters out there. And then the next person, they seem to be a little bit more of the more informed Bernie supporters, Bernie and Warren supporters. They said fourth person, fourth person, they said that they're actively donating to Warren and Bernie because referring to Bernie and Warren, they're actively supporting quality values in Americans. Standing up against corruption, exporting workers overseas, against exporting workers overseas, which means the jobs overseas, so basically trade deals. And then says if Warren ends up losing to Biden, they will support Bernie. So Warren is their first choice, Bernie is their second choice. I can't necessarily be mad at that. I honestly would prefer if this person was the other way around. Honestly, I wouldn't really support them if they said they support Bernie and then Warren, because I don't think you should be honestly supporting Warren on any front, but that's just my opinion. But at least they're I don't know, the bar is kind of low, so at least in this regard, it's like at least they support Bernie, and they don't say the stupid thing that the other people are saying, I support Kamala Harris. But yeah, and what they were saying, they were putting out policies and stuff, which is good. So whereas the other person talking about, the primary last time was so divisive and Bernie Sanders' policies or values are a little bit too extreme. You're not even getting into detail. At least this dude is getting into detail. So you give him credit for that. And the fifth person says they don't understand. So they were a little bit more of the sane Bernie and Warren supporters. They said they don't understand where people see the difference between Bernie and Warren, and the people who say they don't like Bernie but like Warren, that there isn't much substance behind that. So this person is right in the regard that that there is no substance. There's not much substance behind people that say there's that they prefer, they don't like Bernie but like Warren. That's true in a way, because if you like Warren, I don't see why you wouldn't like Bernie. Now, if it's the other way around, if you like Bernie and you don't like Warren, it makes sense, because Warren is less progressive than Bernie is, whereas with Warren, Bernie is more progressive. So it doesn't really make sense when people support Warren. But at least you're understanding that, Bernie isn't less progressive. That would be stupid, because that's not true at all. But when they're saying that, what did they say? They said, so they don't understand where people see differences between Bernie and Warren. There are differences between Bernie and Warren. That's undoubtable. There's no doubt about that. I pointed it out. People on Twitter multiple times that I've spoken to, other hosts, Kyle Klinsky and all that. They've spoken about how Bernie and Warren are not the same. The difference is clear. She supported Donald Trump's. She voted for his military budget. She supported Ben Carson when he was being chosen as the head of HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development. And then she pulled her vote back, or at least said she doesn't support him after a bunch of outcry from progressives. So she just changed her position there. She doesn't support stopping any of the massacre going on in Gaza against Palestinians on behalf of Israel. The weapons deals that we're giving to Israel and allowing them to massacre and commit apartheid against Palestinians. She doesn't oppose that. She does not support Medicare for all. She claims to. I played a video clip on my last episode where she was saying, I totally support Medicare for all, but then she says it's just a framework. What? It's not just a framework. That's not true at all. So I don't know where she's coming up with that stuff. But yeah, that's another thing. And then, she doesn't want to cancel all student loan debt. She only wants to get rid of part of it. It's what was it, 600 billion or 700 billion? 700 million. Bernie wants to get rid of, billion. I think it was 600 billion. Bernie wants to get rid of 1.6 trillion worth of student loan debt, so much more than hers. More than half. Yeah, it's more than half. So yeah, and then, I mean, that's just a bunch of things I can think off the top of my head, which are the difference between them two. I'm sure there's much more. I might be blanking a little bit, but the difference between them are very, very clear. And so if people don't see that, then they just don't know the policies. And then the final person to be asked a question there was Adam Green, who I believe is an advisor for Elizabeth Warren. I know because he's part of this organization called the PCCC, which is the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and they ended up endorsing Warren. I believe Adam Green now, who heads that organization, is her advisor, and he says that she makes the case for really progressive positions and does it in an emotionally compelling way. So this is another case of Warren supporters wanting to connect emotionally to the candidate. So again, Elizabeth Warren doesn't have really progressive positions. She just has like moderately decent Democratic Party positions, where she puts those positions out there. And like I just said before regarding her record of bad votes and making being in favor of bad things, whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy, she is not pushing for really progressive positions. So that's just bullshit. And the fact that these people specifically, but any voters, want their politicians to emotionally compel them, honestly, I find that to be really pathetic. And I think it's sad how people have to be kind of pulled in by emotion, and they can't just like the policies. Why can't you just like the policies? What's wrong with the policies? The policies are not bad. Well, for some politicians, but that's the thing. Maybe Elizabeth Warren knows her policies aren't as good, so her advisors, they're not as progressive. So her advisors tell her, "Yeah, just go be emotional. Just pull, tug at the heartstrings of people." Just like that one person in the first video at the New York rally said that, "Oh yeah, I feel, she touches my heart. She, touches, I feel her in my heart and soul, or whatever." So, yeah, but tugging at the heartstrings of people, it just doesn't help anything. I'm sorry, it's just not a good enough. It's not a good enough way to get people to vote for you. You can't rely on people wanting to go out there and emotionally be in favor of you unless you're pushing policy positions that they support. And if you only focus on getting them emotionally, that's not going to help, because you're not going to get anywhere policy wise. You're just going to focus on the emotion. You're going to focus on the feelings, and then you don't have to push anything on the policy, and then you don't have to say, "Oh well, I didn't promise any policies." I can go out there and push more wars and push for more deregulation, push for more. Tax cuts, but I never said I was going to promise. I never said I was or wasn't going to promise those things. But so, too bad for you. I got you emotionally, so it's too late now. So, yeah. So I mean, these people, these are not majority of them. To be fair, a couple of them were decent, but majority of them are not very smart, educated people. They don't know the ins and outs of the policies, political positions, and the policies that kind of go into every politician out there, let alone the party, let alone, everything that they believe in. So, it's one of those disappointing things, but at the same time, it's not terribly surprising. It's just what you have to kind of come to accept with these people, and it's really kind of shitty. But so the reporter that was asking these questions was Emma Vigeland, and you would think like, okay, she's just going out there. She does, she's being an objective reporter, asking normal questions, whatever. She doesn't support Bernie Sanders more. She doesn't support Elizabeth Warren more. She just an objective person asking questions, just getting to the truth, getting information for you. So I'm going to play a part of this video. This isn't the entire clip. You guys can check the entire clip for you if you want. But this one little last part of the video is her ranting about how people are being totally unfair, going after Elizabeth Warren for not being progressive enough. So she gets really, really angry about this, and then she has almost a 2-minute rant or so, where she just rails against people that have the audacity to go after Elizabeth Warren for not being progressive enough. So check out this video, and then we'll respond to it on the other side.
There are legitimate criticisms of Elizabeth Warren, This is not one of them. This is not one of them. And I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of the recycling of criticisms of Hillary Clinton to attack an entirely different candidate in Elizabeth Warren. Because, like, what? They kind of look alike? They look like they could be sisters? I don't understand it. I do not understand it. And we're supposed to be principled on the left. And looking at facts and policy, they are entirely different candidates. Elizabeth Warren is a progressive, even though she does have question marks around certain parts of her record. This is not controversial to say, but I'm sure it will be. I'm sure this video will get downvoted like hell because of this irrational hatred towards the second most progressive candidate in the race. It's trendy online to dislike her. There are a lot of YouTube personalities, a lot of people in the progressive community who have made it very clear that they're going to go after Elizabeth Warren. They've made careers, they've made money out of telling people what they want to hear and jumping on a certain bandwagon. I'm not one of those people. They don't care about facts in many instances, and I'm not going to be one of those people. So, sorry. And Elizabeth Warren does not deserve these kinds of smears. And again, Bernie Sanders has embraced her, not just as a personal friend, but an ideological ally. And that should tell you everything you need to know about how ridiculous this has been.
So I don't care if Bernie Sanders is friends with Elizabeth Warren. I don't care. I don't care if he's embraced her, endorsed, or whatever the fuck he's done. That kind of stuff doesn't matter to me. I care about the policies. So if they're friends and they're BFFs and they're hanging out and they're kicking it and they're chilling, I don't give a shit. That doesn't mean anything to me. I care about what policy positions they stand for. I already pointed out the policy positions that Elizabeth Warren has advocated for, the votes that she's made, the fact that she's waffling on Medicare for all. She's barely ever talks about foreign policy. Her foreign policy record is abysmal, honestly. If you're thinking about it from a progressive point of view, it's terrible. She's essentially like another neocon. And then, talking about how her and Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton are completely different. Elizabeth Warren endorsed Hillary Clinton. Elizabeth Warren was considering to be Hillary Clinton's VP. So all of a sudden, they're not alike at all? Are you kidding me? Like that's totally ridiculous, man. You can't possibly get that pissed about this. And that it's just like you're just getting mad at like people that dare to criticize somebody for it. And she points it out. She even admits it. It's kind of a strange. That's why I was playing just this part of it. And to be fair, earlier she said that Elizabeth Warren, and she even said it there. She said that Elizabeth Warren has she doesn't have a great record on some things. But she even admits it herself. She even says her record on this and that. It's not she doesn't get into details, but her record on Medicare for her record on endless wars and the military-industrial complex. It's not good. Her foreign policy, all that stuff. Student loan debt, any of the student loan debt crisis. She's not great on that. I already went through this. I'm not going to repeat it again. But the point is that she's had bad votes. She's had bad policy positions, and apparently Emma doesn't want to admit this. I don't really understand what's going on, and it would be to her advantage to come out and just instead of putting out a video about how because Bernie Sanders likes her and because she's stated some progressive positions that she has supposedly that means she's wonderful. I think she even stated early in the video that she's done more. So she's more to the left than Bernie is on economic policies. Based on what? Point out the policies. Point out what bills what legislation, what things she's done that shows that she's more progressive than Bernie Sanders on economic policies and economic ideas. Tell me. I would love to hear it if that's truly the case. Creating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau does not make you a progressive. That's one good thing that she did. That doesn't mean you're totally exempt from being criticized on economic policies and makes you more left than Bernie Sanders. You want to look at the entirety of Bernie Sanders's economic record. He's probably had maybe one or two bad votes at the most. But people are saying, oh, it led to the financial crash or whatever. No, it's bullshit. But like they say that kind of stuff. But apparently it was a little bit of like a deregulation policy and stuff. Like, so I'm just trying to be honest here and say, like, yeah, Bernie Sanders isn't perfect on economic policy, but he's been calling it, like, he's been going after the Fed for years. He's put past, or at least pushed for legislation to audit the Fed, which I believe he did with Ron Paul. And he's done all these things. He's called out the head of the Federal Reserve, criticized them, called them out, during like committee hearings and shit. So Bernie Sanders he is more progressive than Elizabeth Warren. Period. That is end of the story. I mean, there's no way to deny that he's a progressive. Now, she says that, but she tries to like pretend as if like, oh, well, Elizabeth Warren is close. And the fucking media, the mainstream media says this shit too. I can't stand it. They constantly try and push that talking point to its bullshit. It's based on nothing. They're so similar. And like they constantly want to try and pit them against each other too, which is funny. The media pretends as if, oh yeah, she has the same exact. Chris Cillizza was saying it in the same fucking segment I covered on The Point or whatever when I covered it on my last podcast. He said the same exact thing. They have the same liberal structural change policies. She always talks about structural change, but she never really gets into the details, and it's mostly on economic policies. And even those economic policies are the same things that Bernie Sanders has already done. Just like the whole wealth tax thing that I talked about, Bernie Sanders already introduced that. So how is she more progressive than him on economics? It's just not right, man. It's not true. And to say that she's not the same as Hillary Clinton, I don't think she's a carbon copy of Hillary Clinton, but she's very similar to her for sure. There's no doubt about it. And why else would she endorse Hillary Clinton? Now, Bernie Sanders, to be fair, endorsed Hillary Clinton too, but he did it later after he was able to pass some reforms in the DNC, and then the whole kind of Democratic Party platform and stuff, and then eventually at the Democratic National Convention, he endorsed her, or before that endorsed her, and then. Did he endorse her? He may have endorsed her after that. But anyway, he did end up endorsing her, and he gave a rousing speech at the convention and said, we have to vote for Hillary Clinton to defeat Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. So Bernie Sanders endorsed her too, but that doesn't mean that he loves Hillary Clinton, but at the same time, he did it after Elizabeth Warren did. Elizabeth Warren did it right after Hillary Clinton was declared the winner of the California primary, which had tons of controversy and people were throwing up voter rolls and stuff. So there was a lot of issues going on in the Democratic primary in California. So that's another issue for another day. But yeah, but Elizabeth Warren is not a progressive. She's at best just your typical left-ish Democrat at best. That's at best. At worst, she's a center right type person. I wouldn't be surprised, especially when it comes to her foreign policy record and kind of mainly stuff having to do with foreign policy, and the fact that she wouldn't be committed to Medicare for all, and she wouldn't be committed to canceling student loan debt and medical debt and stuff like that, so she's not a progressive. Just stop with that talking point. It's not going to work. Emma Vigeland can yell and scream all she wants, but it's not going to convince anybody. And she's been getting a ton of shit on YouTube from people that have blocked her or unfollowed her, and they're like, yeah, you just seem to be like, and I've said it too, she pretty much seemed to be like an arm of the Elizabeth Warren campaign, essentially, even though she claims to love, Bernie Sanders more and support him more, but she seems to be just standing constantly for Elizabeth Warren because she's so offended by how she gets called out for her positions on things. God forbid you call her out Elizabeth Warren, you don't think she's a progressive, and all of a sudden, I don't know, that means you're a smear merchant or whatever. So it's bullshit, and it's not really helping her status among the progressive community.